where every silence hides a secret. Here, we don't glorify crime, we unmask it. Each episode takes you deep into the minds of real gangsters, men who built empires on loyalty, fear, and fate, and lost it all the same way. From quiet dons to ruthless street legends, every story here is told with truth, tension, and the calm before the gunshot. So pour yourself a drink, dim the lights, and let's step back into the world where every whisper could be your last. They used to say Meyer Lansky never raised his voice, because he never needed to. In a world full of men who bragged with bullets, he controlled millions with a pencil, a quiet stare, and a mind nobody could read. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories told in a calm, cinematic way. Brooklyn, early morning. A skinny boy stands on a cold street corner in 1911, hands tucked into worn-out pockets, watching men twice his size hustle, gamble, and disappear into smoke-filled rooms. Meyer wasn't strong, and he knew it. But he had something far rarer in those streets: patience. He once told a friend, "A fist lasts a second. A smart move lasts a lifetime." Every afternoon, he studied the bookmakers at the docks, the rhythm of money, the way numbers told the truth even when men didn't. School bored him. But numbers? Numbers were loyal. Still, behind that quiet face, the boy carried a memory he couldn't shake, his father bending over a small table, counting coins that never added up, whispering, "One day we'll breathe easier." Meyer believed him. But he also knew something else: no one becomes powerful by waiting. And soon, someone on those streets would notice the boy who never talked, but always listened. Lower East Side, late evening. The streets buzzed with noise, vendors shouting, children chasing each other between laundry lines, and the hum of families starting over in a new country. Meyer moved quietly through it all, carrying a loaf of bread under one arm, textbooks under the other. He was small, serious, and always thinking. People often mistook his silence for shyness. It wasn't. Meyer watched everything. He studied how his neighbors argued over rent, how deals were struck with a nod, how respect could be earned without a single threat. His mother used to tell him, "A calm voice travels farther than a loud one." He didn't understand it then, but he would. At night, he'd sit at the kitchen table doing math problems for fun, scratching numbers into paper until his fingers cramped. When his father asked why, Meyer answered simply, "Numbers don't lie to me." There was tenderness in him too, small gestures, like repairing a neighbor's broken chair or helping old men read their mail. That softness never fully left him, not even later when the world expected him to be harder. But innocence doesn't survive long on Delancey Street. Because one winter afternoon, he met someone who would change his life, and pull him into a world where numbers were worth more than bullets. It started on a cold afternoon outside Hester Street. Meyer was barely a teenager when a group of older boys cornered him, shoving him around for fun. He didn't fight back, he calculated. And that's when a skinny, sharp-eyed kid stepped in. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. "Pick on someone who punches back," Bugsy snapped, pushing the bullies away. Meyer didn't forget that moment. Two boys, both immigrants, both hungry for a life bigger than the cramped tenements they came from, one with fire in his fists, the other with fire in his mind. Together, they formed an unlikely duo. Bugsy handled the danger, Meyer handled the direction. By 16, Meyer was already running small gambling ledgers for neighborhood bookmakers. Not the dirty jobs. The brain jobs. He kept perfect books, unshakable, clean, and invisible. Soon, the older men stopped treating him like a kid and started trusting him with their real money. He once told Bugsy, "If you control the numbers, you control the room." Bugsy laughed. "Fine. You control the room. I'll control the streets." It was a partnership built on instinct and ambition. But success attracts attention, sometimes the wrong kind. And the next man who noticed Meyer wasn't just another street tough. He was someone far more dangerous. Meyer was 19 when he first sat across from Charles Lucky Luciano in a dim back booth of a downtown cafe. Luciano didn't smile, didn't blink much either. He just studied Meyer like a man evaluating a valuable tool. "I hear you make money, clean," Luciano said. tapping ash into a saucer. Meyer simply replied, "Money's only dirty when the books are sloppy." That was the beginning. Within a few years, Meyer wasn't just keeping ledgers, he was designing entire systems. Quiet, untraceable, precise. He created layers of gambling routes, wire service operations, and profit splits that even seasoned mob bosses struggled to understand. And when they questioned him, he'd calmly slide a paper across the table and say, "Tell me what number you don't like. I'll fix it." Men twice his size, twice his age, fell silent. Because he spoke the one language everyone respected, control. While Bugsy enforced order on the street, Meyer shaped a different kind of power, one that didn't require threats or bullets. Just a steady pen, and a mind faster than anyone else's. For a moment, everything felt balanced. Profits rising. Respect growing. Boundaries shifting in his favor. But power has a shadow. And someone in their circle was about to step into it. Trouble doesn't always arrive with gunfire. Sometimes it walks in wearing a smile. By the early 1930s, Meyer, Luciano, and Bugsy had built something big, bigger than any street crew had dreamed of. But with growth came new faces, new partners, and new problems. One of them was Arthur Flegenheimer, the man the newspapers called Dutch Schultz. Schultz was unpredictable, loud, emotional, and constantly angry. Meyer disliked anger, it made people sloppy. But Schultz admired Meyer's quiet genius, calling him the little accountant who could make a dollar sweat. The alliance was fragile from the start. One night, during a closed-door meeting, Schultz slammed his fist on the table. "We take out the prosecutor, or he takes out us. Simple." Meyer's voice stayed calm. "You start killing government officials, there's no going back." Bugsy shifted uncomfortably. Luciano stared at the floor. The room wasn't unified anymore, 3 men pulling one way, 1 man pulling another. This was the first time Meyer felt something he rarely allowed, uncertainty. Loyalty was bending. Trust thinning. And he knew one break could shatter everything. As he left that meeting, Bugsy whispered, "He's gonna blow this whole thing up, Meyer." Meyer didn't answer. Because deep down, he already feared Bugsy was right. The first knock wasn't loud. Just 3 gentle taps on a neighbor's door across the hall. But Meyer noticed. He always noticed. Federal agents didn't need to bang, they preferred quiet steps and listening ears. By the late 1930s, the FBI had begun mapping the invisible lines Meyer spent years hiding. They didn't fully understand his systems, but they knew he was the mind behind them. Surveillance cars lingered at corners. Men in plain suits appeared in cafes he never used to see them in. One morning, Bugsy walked into Meyer's office looking unusually tense. "2 suits followed me from Midtown," he muttered. Meyer adjusted his glasses. "Then don't look panicked." They smelled panic. But it was getting harder to stay calm. Agents interviewed bookmakers, raided small operations, seized ledgers, never the real ones, of course. Meyer always kept the real numbers in his head. Still, pressure creates cracks. Partners grew jumpy. Money routes needed adjusting. And Meyer found himself rewriting entire networks overnight, praying the FBI wasn't 2 steps behind. At home, he stopped sleeping through the night. He'd sit at the window, watching headlights slide across the dark street below. Because the truth was simple. Someone in their circle was talking. And Meyer just didn't know who. The break didn't come with a shout. It came with a whisper. A low-level courier got picked up outside Newark, nothing major, just a routine shakedown. But instead of keeping his mouth shut, he traded information for freedom. A few names. A few routes. Enough for the feds to stitch together a clearer picture of Meyer's world. For the first time, Meyer felt the ground shift beneath him. He gathered his closest men in a quiet backroom. The smoke hung heavy, no one speaking. Finally, Meyer broke the silence. "If they know one route," he said, "they'll know too soon. We rewire everything tonight." Bugsy frowned. "You can't rebuild a whole network in one night." Meyer looked at him gently. "I can. But rebuilding wasn't the real problem, trust was. Every ledger felt exposed. Every phone call felt monitored. Even Luciano seemed distant, carrying the weight of too many enemies and too many alliances. And then came the newspapers. Mob account and under federal review. Not proof. Not charges. But enough to paint a target on his back from both sides, lawmen and rivals. Meyer stared at the headline long after the others left. Quiet. Still. He'd kept the empire clean for years. But now, the walls were bending inward. And only one place was left to hide. The cell was small, barely wide enough for the narrow cot and metal sink, but Meyer treated it like another ledger, fixed, predictable, manageable. When the tax charges finally caught up with him, the newspapers framed it as a downfall. But Meyer saw it differently. Even kings take shelter in storms, he murmured to himself the first night. Prison wasn't full of screams or chaos. It was full of time. Long, quiet stretches of it. And for a man like Meyer, time could be shaped. He read every day, exercised with slow discipline, and wrote numbers in the air with his finger, keeping his mind sharp. Some inmates tried to test him, mistaking his size for weakness. He never raised his voice. Never posture. Just explained things calmly. One man scoffed, "You think you're smarter than the rest of us?" Meyer shook his head. "No. I just think ahead longer." In that silence, respect settled in. But isolation changes a man. He found himself thinking about his father's old promise of breathing easier. Ironically, prison gave him something he never found on the streets: quiet. Still, the outside world kept moving, alliances shifting, old friends drifting, rivals circling. And when those gates finally opened, Meyer would find a world he barely recognized. He stepped out of prison a smaller man physically, but sharper in the ways that mattered. His hair had thinned, his shoulders curved slightly inward, yet his eyes, those calm, calculating eyes, remained untouched. Miami became his new landscape: warm air, ocean breeze, old men playing cards outside cafes. A far cry from the cold New York alleys where he began. He kept to himself, walking slowly along the waterfront each morning. The younger generation of mobsters barely knew him, some thought he was a myth. Others whispered, "That's the man who built the books everyone still uses." Meyer never corrected them. Sometimes Bugsy's name crossed his mind, the wild kid who once protected him on a Brooklyn corner. Luciano's too, aging overseas, both of them chained to the legacies they created. History had a way of turning men into either shadows or legends, and Meyer was becoming both. A reporter once approached him, notebook in hand. "Mr. Lansky, after everything you built, do you have regrets?" Meyer adjusted his glasses and smiled faintly. "Regrets? Only that people remember the noise, and not the math." He kept walking, leaving the reporter frozen. But deep down, Meyer knew one truth remained unfinished. The lesson he had carried since boyhood. Late in his life, Meyer preferred quiet rooms. A single lamp. A stack of old notebooks. The soft ticking of a clock he never bothered to fix. He wasn't running numbers anymore, just memories. Some clear, some blurred by time, all of them stitched together by choices that shaped half a century of American crime. He'd trace a finger across the table, almost as if drawing invisible ledgers. "Everything balances eventually," he'd whisper. Not triumph. Not regret. Just truth. Visitors came from time to time, writers, historians, curious young men searching for old legends. They expected danger, secrets, dramatic confessions. But Meyer gave them something else: calm. One young interviewer asked, "Mr. Lansky, after all the power, the money, the chaos, what did it all mean?" Meyer leaned back, eyes soft. "It meant understanding that loyalty is louder than fear," he said quietly. "And that the smartest man in the room is usually the one who speaks last." He paused, letting the silence settle. "And remember, the world forgets the shouters. It remembers the builders." He outlived the world he built, not because he was lucky, but because he never broke his word. Don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more calm late-night gangster stories.